Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. They just announced that Nicolas Hoult will be playing the new DCEU Lex Luthor starting in Superman Legacy, so we'll break it all down. It's a huge surprise. I wasn't expecting him, but I am actually pretty happy that they picked him. Some of you also might remember that he tested for and failed to get the role of Superman, so a failed superhero winds up turning into more of a villain in the DCEU, which sounds exactly like what happens to Lex Luthor in the comics. He thinks of himself as the hero of his own story, when in reality, he winds up turning into a really big villain. So the Batman Dark Knight adage holds true. A failed superhero now becomes the villain of the story.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Funny how that wound up working out. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. They're getting ready to start filming Superman Legacy, so we'll start learning about more of the cast, more of the actual story, and we'll probably get a little bit of footage from the actual movie. But James Gunn did say, he's like, there's no way I'm going to be revealing exactly what his Superman costume is going to look like. Personally, I do not think it's going to go down like that. I think that somebody, somehow, somewhere will wind up leaking what some of the costumes, with some of the characters, what everything winds up looking like. If he couldn't stop some of that stuff from getting out when he was at Marvel doing the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, he's probably not going to be able to do it when he's doing his DC movies. But one of the major differences in Nicolas Hoult's new version of Lex Luthor from previous incarnations like Jesse Eisenberg's DCEU version in Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League, Kevin Spacey's version, Gene Hackman's version, is that Lex Luthor won't start out in Superman Legacy being the main villain, at least in this first new Superman Legacy movie. I think the idea is that James Gunn is letting his character cook a little, so to speak, like what is he cooking, in a more Michael Rosenbaum, Lex Luthor kind of way, so that over time, gradually, he'll become the main villain of one of the new Superman sequels in success, like assuming that they do wind up making a trilogy of new Superman movies. So James Gunn was casting Nicolas Hoult with the idea that he'd be playing the character in the upcoming new versions of the Justice League movies, whatever those wind up being, and any other big crossover movies that they want to use the Lex Luthor character in. He's going to be huge. It'll be a way bigger role than just being a minor antagonist in this new Superman movie. While I was making this video, they literally also just announced that Sarah Sampaio is going to be his new Miss Tessmacher, so Miss Tessmacher will be with him in the movie. And if you didn't realize, Nicolas Hoult did screen test for Superman previously, but I think what really happened earlier this year, before the strikes all went down, is that James Gunn was secretly screen testing Nicolas Hoult for chemistry with David Corenswet's Superman, so that their unusual relationship as opposites turned enemies eventually worked on screen as they developed that over the next couple of movies. Even though I love Henry Cavill's version of Superman, I feel like he didn't quite have the same kind of chemistry that they should have had between him and the Jesse Eisenberg version of Lex Luthor, and they didn't really have a lot of time to develop that relationship between those two characters. Some of the stuff that Zack Snyder was working up to with the Jesse Eisenberg and Lex Luthor in those unmade Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 movies would have been pretty epic, though. I did a full breakdown of those movies a long time ago, so I'll link that video at the end of this. Zack Snyder was nice enough to reveal the full plot of both of those movies. He did have way bigger plans for his Lex Luthor, creating an injustice society, and it turned into this huge arc across the Justice League sequels. So I think his version of Lex Luthor would have gotten there with the Henry Cavill version of Superman eventually, but I think James Gunn is just trying to start off in Superman Legacy on a stronger footing between those two characters, just on a chemistry basis. Most of you probably think of the Beast character from X-Men First Class movies when you're thinking of Nicolas Hoult in comic book movies. He was a solid version of Beast, but seeing as Kevin Feige and Marvel just brought back Kelsey Grammer's Beast and said, it looks like Marvel's going in a completely different direction with all their X-Men cameos in Deadpool 3 and Avengers Secret Wars. So that kind of explains why Nicolas Hoult would be looking to jump ship from Marvel and come to DC movies. Especially considering it'd be like the next 10 to 15 years of DC movies. Like Lex Luthor, obviously, huge character. And for those of you that don't really see him as a villainous kind of manipulative character, he has talked about his love of playing characters like that. Like he's done it a few times.
I just fell in love with him as a character. He's very manipulative, smart, and cruel, but also makes sense and is, jockeying for position, as you say, within this court, and using all the pieces and people he can to get the results he wants.
Some of you also might remember a couple years ago, he had to drop out of the Mission Impossible movies. He was originally going to play the villain role that Esai Morales wound up playing during Mission Impossible 7 and 8, so he was already going to play much bigger villains on screen. So when you're thinking about the character in Superman Legacy, think of him more in these upcoming DC movies, like multiple upcoming DC movies, is more like Michael Rosenbaum's Smallville Lex Luthor. And when I say that, that doesn't mean he's going to start out being like best friends with Superman, not knowing that he is Superman or anything like that. It just means that he won't start out being the world's biggest villain. And he won't start out being a villain to Superman at all. He'll just start out being a very powerful figure in the world who gains notice of Superman during the movie, and through the events of the film will grow to mistrust him. Until, in future movies, he'll turn into a full-blown villain trying to destroy Superman. Fun fact too, James Gunn has also been really good friends with Michael Rosenbaum in real life for a long time. That's how Michael Rosenbaum wound up in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It's weird that they have not worked together more. Some of you might also remember recently that they talked about how he thought that his Lex Luthor was one of the best versions of all time.
And you are the best Lex. Let's admit it. We know you're the best Lex.
Come on, you're being funny.
I'm not being funny. You're definitely the best Lex.
Really?
Definitely.
He's not wrong. Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor from Smallville is still one of the best versions of Lex Luthor. I've already talked a little bit about the actual plot of Superman Legacy. James Gunn clarified a couple of plot points, like to say there's no Middle Eastern terrorist plot in the film. There was a very brief Middle Eastern plot during Batman v Superman, so like they're completely swerving on having something similar to that during Superman Legacy. But he did not deny any of the other plot points that were mentioned recently, so a lot of the reported plot sounds weirdly similar to My Adventures with Superman, that new TV show. It's a great TV show. Obviously, the movie's going to be a little bit different. It's just similar to that plot. Basically, the idea being that humans get their hands on Kryptonian technology. Superman is alerted to its presence by his Fortress of Solitude. Because he starts the movie not knowing a lot about his heritage, he intervenes, thinking that the Kryptonian tech can help him learn more about his heritage. James Gunn did say that the big theme of the movie will be Superman trying to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage with his heritage on Earth, being a corn-fed Kansas farm boy. It's kind of the same situation during My Adventures with Superman, where he grows up not really knowing anything about Jor-El or Krypton, and then slowly learns through his ship, but he hasn't quite entered it yet, hasn't got like the full info dump from the Kryptonian AI that is Jor-El. Sounds like something similar happens at the beginning of Superman Legacy, where he starts the movie, he probably has a version of the Fortress of Solitude, but he hasn't gotten the full info dump. They also, strangely, did the same thing on the Smallville TV show, where he basically grew up, got his powers, then started to figure those out and slowly developed this Superman identity. Then he started to learn all about Krypton, his father, all the other big Superman villains started showing up. During the movie, General Sam Lane and Amanda Waller will be big characters, and reportedly, Michael Rooker will be playing General Sam Lane. James Gunn did say that some of his Guardians of the Galaxy actors would wind up in the new DC movies. Supposedly, the Authority is working for Sam Lane and Amanda Waller. They send them to take the Kryptonian tech, putting the Authority at odds with Superman, who probably don't trust him at first. They already confirmed that Angela Spica, aka the Engineer, is going to be one of the other antagonists in the movie, but Brainiac will be the actual main villain of the film. Funny enough, they're also doing a very similar plot on My Adventures with Superman Season 2 with Brainiac and Zod coming to Earth. The only difference in the movie is that Zod isn't going to be in it, or as far as we know, Zod's not going to be in it. Some of the Brainiac plot in Superman Legacy might be similar or based on some of the Jeff Johns Brainiac storyline, where he comes to Earth already having stolen the bottle city of Kandor, and it might help set up the Supergirl movie that they're working on too. But I think part of the idea is that Superman will learn more about his Kryptonian heritage from his interactions with Brainiac, who knows all about Kryptons and Kryptonians. As far as we know, though, the new Supergirl isn't going to be in this movie, and it's probably not going to wind up being the one from the Flash movie. As for Nathan Fillion's Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, my assumption is that some of them are either also working with Amanda Waller or know about what's going on with Superman and just keeping an eye on him and help him fight Brainiac during the movie. Green Lantern would probably get involved just because of Brainiac's arrival too, like that's his whole thing. Green Lantern Corps protecting Earth's sector from space-based threats. The other thing you might have thought about too is that the Green Lantern Corps would have probably monitored Superman's pod arriving on Earth years before this, and Green Lantern might have just been clocking him, waiting to see what would happen as he grew up and developed his powers. Like, are you going to turn into a hero? Are you going to turn into a villain? Are we going to need to deal with you? But because the movie is meant to take place pretty early in Superman's career, I think when things pick up, most of the world hasn't learned that he exists yet, and they'll have some minor adventure at the beginning of the movie that will serve as his big public outing where everybody sees him and what he can do. And as a result of that, as you would expect, there are a lot of huge reactions from the superhero community and a lot of other people like Lex Luthor too. Like, everyone is very wary of him, like, are you here to help us or are you here to take over the planet? But I think through the course of the movie, the idea is he's supposed to win over the trust of some of these Justice League adjacent characters like Hawkgirl, for instance. I wouldn't be surprised if Green Lantern also sort of catches him up on Kryptonians just in general, just because his Green Lantern ring would have all that information in it too. Like, here's the info dump on what happened to Krypton. And because we're talking about Brainiac showing up in these new DC movies, originally, if you remember, Henry Cavill mentioned they were going to do a version of Brainiac in his Man of Steel sequel movie. We don't really know much of what the plot of what that was going to be, probably not too dissimilar from the more recent Jeff Johns Brainiac run. A lot of Brainiac stuff in present day references that run. But most people nowadays, when they think of Brainiac, especially recently, is the Injustice version of the character, who was great. If you haven't played those games, I would recommend checking them out. There was also a version of Brainiac they did on the Krypton TV show relatively recently, but his origin was a little bit different. There was this whole time travel plot, and he kind of infiltrated Krypton and slowly took it over from the inside. And because we're referencing so much Smallville stuff with the new version of Lex Luthor and the way they develop his character, the version that they did of Brainiac on Smallville was actually based more on the original comic book version that started out as a Kryptonian AI that ran amok. He was played by James Marsters from Buffy, who played multiple versions of Brainiac, like Brainiac 3, then Brainiac 5. Maybe that'll also happen in the new DC movies too, where we see multiple versions of the character, because that's his whole thing, is that he evolves every time he gets defeated. But everyone post all your Nicolas Hoult reactions in the comments below. I'll do more videos for the movie when we get more details. Like I said, they're going to start filming pretty soon, so hopefully we'll get some footage from the actual set. Click here for my Loki Season 3 video, and click here to learn about the full plot of Justice League 2 and the Justice League 3 movies. It is crazy. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.